evening, visionary readers. Welcome to our monthly meeting. I, Tepi Somaja, will be your host. For the purpose of those who are joining us for the first time, we call ourselves visionary readers. And as visionary readers, our vision is to see every African home with a bookshelf. Our mission is to promote the reading culture within the African continent and beyond. I hope that tonight you'll be inspired to continue reading and inspire others to read even more. Tonight we have 5 book reviewers and a guest speaker that will come later on in our session. As we always do our book reviews, we are giving each reviewer 5 minutes to share with us a review of the book. And also we're going to allow one question in between each reviewer. When we have more time towards the end of our session, that's when we'll allow more questions for our book reviewers. As we begin, I would like us to start and roll our meeting. And our first reviewer is Msufu. Pardon me if I'm butchering your surname. We'll be reviewing Finding Common Ground. Bandile Msufu, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, this is the book I'm reviewing. Coincidentally, it was actually being launched at the State Theatre yesterday. So yeah, it's a pity that I'm only telling you about it now when you could have attended the review yesterday. So yeah, so Wandile Sihlobo is one of the leading minds in agricultural economics in South Africa. He works for Agbiz. So as an economist, he's always writing articles covering many topics within the agricultural industry. So this book is a collection of his articles that he's written over a number of years. I think it's from 2018, from 2017 until 2019, and it's grouped according to specific topics. So the main one that really drew me to it was around land reform in South Africa. So in it, he's got articles that is written looking at historical events that have happened within agriculture, how land was distributed during apartheid era, and then he looks at what worked and what didn't work, and then he looks at what the ANC proposed, which was not really ANC proposed, but what the EFF pushed forward, and which was the expropriation without compensation and how that would affect the industry. And then another topic that he looks at was the issue of homelands in the Eastern Cape and or in all the rural areas where you find that there is land that is used for agriculture, but it's being underutilized, or because of issues of deeds, people cannot really use that land optimally. And then he goes into other topics or other areas of potential opportunity within agriculture, which includes the cannabis boom, the growth in the cannabis industry and the opportunities that are there. Very, very interesting things that he discusses there, looking at the fact that the cannabis industry is an industry that's already thriving, but mostly without it's thriving unlawfully, and what it can do for the country in terms of tax revenues. He looks at others, like a few states that have done it in the US, and how much money that they get in revenue from taxing the cannabis industry. And then another interesting topic was inclusivity in agriculture, where he looks at the issue of women's involvement in agriculture. It's not an issue for the rest of Africa, where you find that most agricultural production or most agricultural output actually comes from women. But in South Africa, it is an issue where most people that are involved in agriculture, in terms of ownership, it's men, and particularly older and most times white men. So it looks at inclusivity and what it can do, and how we can use that to close the gender gap, how we can use that for the country to meet the goals that it has set for itself in terms of development, and then also the idea of even including young people as well. Because as someone that, one of the reasons what drew me into the book was because I'm in the industry, so some of the issues that he's covering are issues that I'm actually experiencing on a day-to-day. So it's like issues of getting young people into leadership positions and all of that. And I think the one thing that I would have to make sure that I cover is the part that he spoke about what we can do or what we can learn from other African countries. This was, and I think for that topic, he touched on the Zimbabwean land redistribution that went poorly and what lessons we can take from it and what we can avoid, and or how we can avoid such things and the knock on the economy that the country took. And then also he speaks about how the Kenyan government is one of the leaders, actually is a leader in Africa for agro production, and how we can learn from them, and in also tapping into other markets that we're not really tapping into. And then lastly, there is the just want to make sure that I get the name right. It's the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was which is presenting a lot of opportunities, not only for South Africa but for other African countries to foster more trade within our countries. And I think that's about it. But it's a very interesting book. I think it's still available I think he's still marketing it. With the launch. He's been actively marketing it. I think it's definitely something that it's definitely a book that everyone should read. Just considering the fact that it's the issue of land is one that affects all of us, and there's so much potential for the continent of Africa to be self-sustainable through agriculture. So that's my piece, MC.
Thank you so much, Wandile, for your book review. Indeed, the issue of the land and the issue of agriculture is very close to everybody's heart, Wandile. Moving on to our next book reviewer, we have Matepo Sioga, who will be reviewing her book, Your Transformation Sermons. Are you there, Matepo?
Yes, I'm here.
Over to you, Matepo.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and for the flow. It is my first session here today, so I don't know exactly how. I actually have not really reviewed the book in this manner before, so forgive me if I don't do things the right way. But thank you once again for the opportunity. Would like to, however, start by just reading two very short paragraphs for the book for the purposes of this review, because I feel that, by starting with these two short paragraphs, it will make more sense when I get into the review. So the first one, chapter 5, page 75. My question to you is, are you willing to be inconvenienced and uncomfortable in order for you to live the life you know you're meant to live? As much as I would have wanted everyone's answer to be yes, that is not always the case. Most of the times, our appetite for greatness does not match our willingness to attain it. And then the second one is in chapter 3, page 43. I chose the life button every single day, no matter how hard it was. Even during those times when my mind gave me every plausible reason to press the button labeled death. I knew that if I missed my chance to press that live button one morning, I would also miss it the next, as well as the ones to come after. I developed a hunger and thirst for change. So my book is titled Your Transformation Summons. I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah, okay, should be able to see it. Your Transformation Summons, with the subtitle, Will You Answer the Call to Radical Change? So at the core of this book it's really about transformation. For me personally, I always say that at the core of my passions, at the core of my being, lies humanity. I have such a passion for people. And when I stepped into my transformation, like, and I got it, and I got the formula, and I got it right, I was like, I definitely want everybody else to get to experience this. I want people to get to walk in this transformation. So that is really what is at the heart of this book, transformation. Now, with this subtitle, I asked this question, will you answer the call to radical change? And I know that that's what everybody's going to say at first. We're going to answer yes. Most of us are going to say, yes, I want transformation. I mean, who's not going to say that they want to live a best life and live in their purpose? Everybody's going to want that. However, I feel that while a lot of us may answer yes, not all of us are prepared to actually put in the work in order to achieve this transformation, which will equate to living your best life and walking in your purpose and in what you're meant to be doing. So that is really why I kind of put that question, because I want to challenge the reader that, you know, as much as then you might answer yes, what are you prepared to do? Are you actually, in fact, are you prepared to put in the work in order to achieve this transformation, in order to walk in your greatness? So I start off with a very important aspect, which for me was forgiveness. That's the first chapter of the book, titled Forgiveness, because when I went on my journey of transformation, there was so much unpacking I needed to do. There was so much alone time I had to have with myself so that I could really look at my life over the past few years, look at the things that I thought I could have done better, the things that I can work on. And one of the things I'd noticed is that I was living in so much bitterness, so much anger, so much hate. Not hatred, but yeah, something along those lines. Because I am one of those who fall part of that statistic of people who were abandoned or rejected by their fathers. So that for me was really such a root. That was a root of many of the things that I'd gone through in my life. You know, a lot of the situations I found myself in was mostly because I was trying to close up that gap that I felt I didn't have or I didn't receive from my father. And I think that cycle, it just became such a toxic, never-ending cycle, because now you're trying to cover this gap with so many things which are leaving you even more broken, one of them being relationships. So yeah, I had to now say, okay, you know what? For the most part, a lot of things that have happened in my life, it's because of that root. So how about I go back to that and I really activate what I need to in order to move past it? So I remember sitting down with myself for a whole week and saying, you know what, I need to, really dig deep and do some introspection. So that's why forgiveness is like the number one thing for me. And I put it in the book as the first thing because that was something that I think activated my journey to transformation, because I had to understand, and this is what I echo in the first chapter as well, that I cannot walk in this best life, in this purpose, while I'm still harboring all of these things, because these are some of the things that are holding me back from achieving this greatness that I desire. So I put forgiveness down because I know that that's something a lot of people, majority of the people, are really struggling with. And I said that was my activator, and I kind of challenged the reader as well. What is that one thing that is preventing you as well? For me, it might be forgiveness. For somebody else, it might be something different. But what is that thing that is preventing you from entering into your transformation? And then as the book progresses, I kind of document how my journey of finding myself again, or walking into my transformation was. And even if I must say so myself, I think I put a nice spin to it, because I didn't write the book in, is it first person? Yeah, I didn't. So I'm not writing it as, okay, Matepo, I went through this, I went through that. I use a story, and then I kind of comment story based on the things that I've gone through. So as the book progresses with the chapters, I kind of talk about how I walked into this. I mean, chapter 2 talks about the life-altering moments. I speak about things that kind of happen to you when you realize that, okay, you really need to move. I mean, for me personally, it was a thing of, okay, this is the cycle that I've been in over the past few years. It's not getting me anywhere. I'm tired. I was so stuck in a place where my mental health was not even good. And that was one of the reasons why I said, okay, we really need to work on this, so that was my life altering moment, when I found myself in yet again another toxic relationship that was not getting me anywhere. And I was just okay with settling for what I could get because, half a man is better than no man. Because I mean, if you're somebody who has daddy issues, that that's some of the things you might actually face. So I got to a point where I was like, enough is enough. I am meant for more. And that's what chapter 2 really is about. I speak about, getting to a point where you're like, I know I am meant for more. I don't have to live life like this. I'm meant to live in my purpose. I'm meant to walk in my purpose. And that was something that was very important to my journey. And yeah, so as the book really goes by, I give such, so it's a self-development book. Yeah, self-development, personal development book. And I give certain tools as to, what made me move beyond just answering yes to the call of transformation to actually putting in the work. I mentioned now in chapter 3, the excerpt that I just read now, that I chose between the life or the death button. This was something I remember when I started my journey. I started waking up early. So I'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and it was hard. And every single morning when that alarm went off, it almost literally felt like an angel was standing in front of me with a life or a death button, and in order for me to wake up, I knew I had to press that life button. But if I just wanted to stick to the life that I know is not getting me where I need to be, I would just choose to sleep and press the death button. Basically, that's what I was trying to get to. So yes, guys, anyway, I am so passionate about this book. I could go on and on forever, but really at the core of the book is, as what I challenge the reader is, how do you go beyond just saying, yes, I want to walk in my purpose, I want to live in this greatness, to actually being at a point where you put in the work. I mean, for me on my journey, I put in the work like every single day, consistently till today. I mean, while I've achieved quite a bit, but at this point, I've put in the work, and I challenge you as the reader to do the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matebo. Thank you. Indeed, it shows that it's your book and you're very passionate about transformation and the process that you have to take for you to get that transformation. Thank you. Do we have a question for Matebo?
Yes, maybe just from my side. My name is Wendy. I don't know if I need to put my video on, but here I am. Yes, I am. Matebo, I think your book is sounds, very practical, and I'm looking forward to actually getting it because you do mention it's a personal development book. So my question is, sometimes a person can read something and then what is the one thing that actually made you have the transformation? Because sometimes you can read a lot of self-development books and personal development books, but you need something that sort of clicks and says, yeah. You know what I mean? That aha moment. So yeah, just that. And then where do we get the book?
Okay, yeah, I was going on and I forgot to mention where do you get the book?
Okay.
So I in chapter 2 I did mention that it's chapter 2 is actually titled life altering moment. So I had my life altering moment, and like I mentioned a bit earlier on that, I noticed that I was just going through this constant cycle where, I'm trying to really close up this void and this gap, and I'm just getting into more things that are just leaving me feel so broken and so hurt, so I got to a point where now, I mean, my mental health, the state of my mental health was not even good, how I just felt about myself as a person. And I think the big aha moment for me was I had a period of about 3 days, and I mentioned in the book where, God was just giving me these visions. Matebo, this is where I want you to be. I saw myself standing in front of so many people and speaking to my crowd being the young girls and boys who've gone through this, who've gone through abandonment and rejection, women who've been in toxic, abusive relationships, people who've suffered from mental health challenges. And I saw myself standing in front of these multitudes. And, you know, these are the visions that God would give me for that 3 days. And on the third day, I was like, okay, God, I accept, it's fine. How do I walk in this? And the first thing it was, you need to let go of your dysfunction. I had to let go of my dysfunction, walking in my unforgiveness, bitterness, choosing to just, you know, close up this gap using all the things that would not work for me. So that was my aha moment. Like, you know, just knowing that I'm meant for more. You know, I had, and I speak about vision in chapter 5 as well. It's so important to be able to have vision and to see your goals and see where you're going. I think that takes you to your why. Why are you here? What are you doing? I think if you have your why, maybe in a more practical way, finding your why, which I always say has to be bigger for a reason that is bigger than you, is such a good tool to keep you going. Where you can get the book, it is on Amazon. And then I am also still selling the book. I'm trying to get it onto the shelves. It's a bit tricky, but I am personally selling the book. I will leave my details. It's 250 rands. If you're in Pretoria, I deliver free of charge. And then if you're outside of Pretoria, I deliver through Paxi. Oh yes, sorry, before I go, I know my time is up, but I also made a follow-up. Okay, please don't mind the sticker. It's actually my personal thing. But I made a journal for the book, actually, that goes with the book. You can see the titles, the titles almost have the same font. And this is just a more practical way to kind of put into, you know, get your transformation going. And that is going for 300. But if you buy the both of them together, it's 500. It's a bundle special. So yeah, I am selling the book. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. And I do Toastmasters, so I know the rules. You're not supposed to go.
Thank you so much, Matepo. Thank you so much. I saw that we had a hand as well from Mfana Kona, but may I please request that we hold the hand, and then we'll give you a chance towards the end of our session. Thank you so much, Matepo, for your book review. Moving on to our next reviewer, which is Rachel Chinyoka, to review Grit, the Power of, by Angela Duckworth. Are you there, Rachel?
Yes, I'm there, Madam MC.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. I picked up Grit from a take a look. I was scrolling for books. So just the title of the book just spoke to me. It just jumped out. Definitely went straight to my basket. So this is a book by Angela Duckworth, where she tries to actually successfully describes the role grit plays in our endeavors to succeed in life. So the book title is Grit, My Passion, Why Passions. I don't know if you can see it. I think might not be able to, the background. So the book is Why Passions and Resilience Are the Secrets to Success. So just as you open the book, there are 2 pages full of praise. So you have the Washington Post, you have Simon Sinek, you have the Economist, all singing praise about the contents of this book. So immediately I knew I was in good company. And Angela herself is was a global management consultant at a very good, big McKinsey firm. She then became a teacher and thereafter proceeded to go into academia, research as a researcher. So she's a professor in psychology. So she introduces of grit at the very beginning as a combination of passion and perseverance. So you have to have the two in order for you to exhibit what she terms to be grit. And she starts with her own story. So her father is someone who always spoke very, well, he would say, you're not a genius. So he would compare his children to the likes of your Isaac Newtons, you know, the very well-known geniuses. And in so doing, would verbally tell the children that they don't compare with those geniuses. Ironically, when she started working as on this research on grit, her content was recognized and she got an award for it. And that award is a Genius Award. And it's not something that you get your friends to nominate you for. No, it's a separate panel that just views your work and awards you without any input from anyone who knows you. So as such, she decided it got to her to study further, to have a look at it further. She looked at some of the questions that she looked at were why at grit was why it was because she had discovered that what we accomplish may depend more on our passion and perseverance than our innate talent. So the way she describes her concepts across the book is by storytelling. So she goes on to look at this, the requirements of this team. And I think it's the Navy, how to get there. People who succeed, they had to have this grit in order to succeed. She goes on to present scientific proof to substantiate her claims. So key data she gathered from her questions: who are the top of your field? What are they like? What do you think makes them special? So she delved into that, and she uncovered that, to be great, it's a series or a confluence of very small activities that that are either taught to you or you come across them by accident. But however, they are drilled into becoming a habit. If taken individually, those particular activities, there's nothing extraordinary about them. Take running. You go out, you run every day. There's nothing extraordinary about that. But how do you differentiate the Bolt from the others? Usain Bolt is going out every day and improving from what you were yesterday. So she then discovers that taken individually, those activities are not extraordinary, but done consistently and correctly, they produce excellence. So this really spoke to me immensely. And she then goes on to touch on talents. How does talent measure in this grit equation? Then there is a place for talent. Yes, she describes talent as the ability as the rate at which a person learns something. So there are those people who are able to learn faster than others, and therefore they are more talented. They can do a lot within a very short period of time. But how then does it translate? Where does grit come in to the mix? And then she discovers that without effort, talent is nothing. So she introduces the concept of talent counts, but effort counts twice. So she developed what she calls a grit score. And that grit score is a series of 10 questions measured or scaled from 1 to 5, 1 being the less gritty and 5 being the more extremely gritty. And thereafter, you can actually use the scale to see where you rank within that grit score. What I like is she tells you that grit, you can grow grit. And you grow the grit by looking at interest, practice, purpose, and hope. So interest being passion begins intrinsically within you, doing what you love. Practice, daily discipline of doing. Purpose, it has to matter. Hope, you keep at it every day. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for taking time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Do you have any question for Rachel?
All right, so thank you so much for the review. I mean, it's great. It's a very great book. So I think for people that are listening, what kind of a person would you actually recommend, to read the book? So that's the first question, and the second question is, personally, if there's one thing that you took out of it, what is it? Thank you.
Thank you. I would encourage everyone to read the book. I would encourage students. I would encourage entrepreneurs. I would encourage anyone who wants to succeed at anything, any field, really, to just pick up that book. You will learn a lot. And I say so because the book tells you how it appeals to parents as well, and how parents can enforce grit in children. And this by daily gestures, communicating warmth, respect, and high expectation. So it has to be a way you deliver it. And how it has impacted me right at the beginning of reading this book, I spent 2 years without running. So I picked up weight, and with weight and the risks of COVID and, high risk and all that, I was very afraid. And as soon as I started reading this, it reinforced something that inside me had died during the lockdown. I think we were all burnt out. And as soon as I read it, I think it was the first 2 chapters, I picked up my running. Every day I go, because I've learned that in those little activities done consistently and correctly, definitely by the end of the year, I'll be a different person. And also it told me that in order for me to get grittier, I need to find a community or a community with a grit culture. So it can be a club of runners, it can be a group of readers, and it can be a group of speakers. So something that feeds into my life philosophy that I would have identified. And I need to make sure that everything that I do on a daily basis leads to me achieving that life philosophy. So it's been instrumental, and I will read it again and again. So I instill those particular, nuggets in everything that I do. And I know by the end of the year, I'll definitely be a much, much grittier person. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Indeed, indeed. Our last reviewer, which is Irene Downer. And Irene is to give a brief presentation on International Express articles on libraries. Are you there, Irene?
It's based on the evolution of literacy, which is the foundation of reading, and so appropriate to us. And the introduction I'm doing now is from a 4-hour lecture I did in 2 parts on great libraries. I reduced it to an hour's lecture last week to 5 minutes, and I took out an introduction to this article that I will do for you from the International Express. It was a huge exercise. And so, how do we define a library? It is a building in which a collection of books, CDs, newspapers, manuscripts are kept for people to read, to study, or to borrow. There are many types, of course: private, public, specialist, university, and national. And there are many, many great libraries around the world from early times to the present. Libraries are almost, ladies and gentlemen, as old as history. And based on surviving records and archaeological discoveries, is our knowledge of when man actually began to keep records. Soon after man learned to write and to put down in graphic form, using some form of alphabet, he began to, of his evidences, of his experiences, his observations, and later developed into true literature of thoughts and philosophies. He began to save these records. And these collections, ladies and gentlemen, are archives or prototype of a library. And believe it or not, these have been in existence in the modern world, the Western world, for nearly 5,000 years. Can you believe it? Well before Christianity, which is 2,000 years. The early formats were clay tablets, papyrus rolls, parchment codex, printed book, and of course to the current digital age. Right, with the advent of the printing press, my goodness, a huge transformation at the beginning of modern history, 1500s. The most important event in library history between writing and electronics. This invention made thousands of copies of books possible and available compared to the early ones of the medieval and the ancient world, where they were copied by hand by the few literate scribes. For civilization to progress, libraries must be used and books must be read. That is self-explanatory. So now I move to this article from the International Express, which I buy regularly. It's a British publication. It comes out weekly. I buy it fairly regularly, as you can see. Readily available in our retail stores. Wonderful journalism, superb writing, and generally pretty objective. A global view of what's happening in Europe and the United Kingdom. And this article says here, and it can relate, and you can double or triple the statistics from Britain, as I'm going to read to you now, to relate to Africa and the rest or any other third world countries. It says here, 1 in 4 children has never been to a public library. This is now a first world country, which is Britain. More than a quarter of British children have never visited a public library. A survey by children's comic Beano found 26% had yet to visit, despite 4 in 5 parents, which is 84% of the population, wanting their youngster to go more often. While 3/4 had not visited in over a year, more than half of children, 55%, were put off because they mistakenly thought that libraries, you have to be quiet, behave yourself. Right, it's changed these days. 8 to 10 parents believe their little ones are reading less than they did when they were young, with more than 2/3, 72%, say that their children do not read for pleasure regularly. The average child reads 6 books a year, compared with their parents reading at least 10 at the same age. Now, I think the visionary readers read a hell of a lot more than that. And particularly myself, I've read an enormous amount, and I read prolifically, but more than ever before during the lockdown period. However, 3/4, 77% of children said they liked reading with their parents. Okay. The National Literacy Trust, and this is incredibly important, people, found that the number of people getting 5 GCEs, which is a particular matric subjects, could rise by 1.1 million in a generation if all children read for pleasure daily. Can you imagine the difference that could make in progress and the understanding of what goes on and awareness around the world, and hopefully prevents the conflicts that we now experience? Basically, what I wanted to let you know is how important what we are doing. Read and encourage others to read. We will not progress otherwise. There you go.
Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you so much. It really brings light on how we must also help our kids read even more, because we have to start them young. Now reached the moment where we're going to hear from our guest speaker, who is the author of Footprints, Laying the Path, and that is Dr. McLean Sibanda. Dr. McLean Sibanda, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, MC, and good evening, good afternoon to everyone that has joined, and also congratulations to everyone that has done a book review this afternoon. Great work, and for those that have authored their books, also congratulations. And I think, Irene did, talk, just now about the importance of, reading. And what we're seeing today is that increasingly people are reading less and less than, people used to do in the past. I think many of us that went, that come from the old school, we were forced almost to read, a book. In fact, we were forced to actually take books out of the library. And today, I guess, and also I guess with the lockdowns, many people have not been able to get to the libraries. So, perhaps before I get onto, footprints, just to, pick up on the importance of reading, that reading is an important, skill. And it's not only reading for pleasure, but the ability to be able to read and to be able to get whatever the message that one is reading from anything, and then to go on to apply it in one's life. In my case, what I found is that, every time I read something, I get to reflect. So I think in pictures. And so when I read, I get transported in essence to, to some place where this, where the setting of the book is, if it's a fiction or if it's, a story. And I start to imagine. So that's one thing that I found, at least in my case, reading does. It just, it activates my creativity, and I start to think, quite differently. So once upon a time, and I talk about this in my first book, Nuts and Bolts, I joined what was a multi-level marketing, company, and I think it's still in existence, Amway. And its supporting company, which was called Network 21. And through that particular organization, I think that's where I actually strengthened my ability to read. And the advice that we given was every day, read for 15 minutes. So pick up a time, whether in the morning or at night, and read for 15 minutes. If you can read more, that's great. But in order to develop the habit, start with 15 minutes. You'd be surprised how far that actually 15 minutes, goes. So I'd really encourage everyone to read, for 15 minutes, every day. So pick a time that is your time, even if it means waking up 15 minutes early. And you sit up and pick up a book and read a couple of pages. And also I developed a habit of always carrying a book, with me. So if I get stuck waiting for somebody, then I'll pull out the book and I would read. I know the current generation says, well, I can read online, but, I come from an old school where I like to flip the pages. And, if you pick up any book that I've read, chances are you're going to find that I have scribbled on it. I have made notes on it because that's how I remember. And because I think in pictures, whenever I write in a book and whenever I then remember what was in the book, I tend to even think, know on which side of the book, is it on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the book? Where I have written, my notes. So I really encourage everybody to, to just pick up, and read, a book, hard copies is actually, ideal. And also try to read, quite widely. So, I read, widely, currently, one of the books that I've just picked up, which I'm starting this week, is by Daniel Coleman. It's actually quite difficult with the background, but it's a book called Focus. So I've listened to to Daniel's YouTube videos, and I find the way that he presents the topic to be quite interesting. The hidden driver of excellence. And I think for writers as well, reading is important. And I think I've heard Dr. Sponseni saying this, that it does also enlarge your vocabulary, because you pick up different words, but also you pick up, different styles, of writing. So now, coming to, my book, Footprints. So Footprints is the latest of my books. It's quite difficult with the, but I think you've seen it in the advert anyway, in the WhatsApp group. And it got released in October, last year. And it's called Laying the Path. It's about intellectual property for innovation and economic development. And I started writing this book largely inspired by a couple of things. One is I am a visiting lecturer at a university called the Africa University, where I teach a master's program in teach a module on innovation and entrepreneurship. And the students are drawn from across different countries in sub-Saharan, countries. And in fact, I start this year's teaching tomorrow, for a week. I've got students drawn from about 15 countries in the continent. And every time I teach and also, talk about some of the case studies, I find that the challenges that we face in South Africa are similar to the challenges that they have faced. But also I've been quite fortunate to travel throughout the continent with the World Intellectual Property Organization, working with small, medium enterprises and startups. And through that, there's also been a lot of lessons around what are the challenges around issues of intellectual property. And many of us are aware of, recently during the COVID, the scramble for vaccines, big discussion around intellectual property, big discussion around patent waivers, and the need to do away with patents, and so forth. And much of it, sadly, has been driven from a lack of understanding of the intellectual property regime. And so that is one reason why, I looked at writing the book. The second one is I reflected on 15 years spent in government or in public service. And I, talking to people that I've been fortunate to work with, drawn from both South Africa and from right across the globe, the US and India, it dawned on me, that we had done some incredible work. But much of that work, many people did not really understand the context, of the work. But also the work that we had done could then be translated and used in other, countries. And so the idea was then to document what we had done. The third reason, which was really, I think, the main reason, and I start off the book, with that, was to demystify intellectual property. Because when I started talking to my publisher about my first book, and the second book was in essence part of the first book, she said to me, no, intellectual property is very complex. It's a very complicated subject, but she had not even read the manuscript. So I decided, well, let me demystify intellectual property. And so, Footprints is really that, Footprints. It's, all of us are going to walk through this life, and at the end of our time, the bigger question is, what would we have left, behind? And so Footprints for me is, is really one of those things where I remind each and every one of us that in whatever we do, in whoever we become, we should always, do the best to improve the betterment, look at the betterment of humanity, and leave our own footprints along, the sand. So the book is in three parts. Part one looks at intellectual property matters, why bother with intellectual property. It demystifies intellectual property. It deals with the different concepts. What is a patent? What is a trademark? What is a trade secret? What is copyright? And so forth. And I use, some relatable examples like Batu and Drip in the case of, trademarks. And the idea is hopefully, people stop talking about I want to patent my name, and people will start to say, well, I want to trademark my brand. I want to trademark my name. And then I deal with a chapter that, in essence, looks at significant moments that have shaped my approach to intellectual property and innovation. And this is, in essence, in large part, could be the subject of a different book altogether, that each and every one of us can write, which are significant moments. We can talk, forever about significant moments, but significant moments happen every day. In fact, I believe that there's a significant moment happening today in this event for someone that you reflect on a few years later. And I think, as Steve Jobs says, you cannot connect the dots going forward, but you can connect the dots going backwards. And unfortunately, we realize the significant moments going backwards. And therefore, in that particular chapter, I remind all of us to always be present, whenever we are in the presence of other people, because we never know whether that is a significant moment, happening. Part 2 deals with the work of building intellectual property in South Africa. And today, all universities have got a law and a regulatory framework that deals with intellectual property, and that is captured in Part 2. Part 3 builds up on where I started off. Why does it matter? And it looks at Africa. It looks at the African continental free trade area. And we heard from the first review about Wandile's book, about the importance of the African continental free trade area. I advocate for a builder and makers economy. I also reflect on the scramble for vaccines. And then I have a guest contribution from Professor Caroline Ngube from University of Cape Town, as well as a guest contribution from Professor Joseph Strauss, who was my PhD supervisor. So the book is available at Exclusive Books. It's also available on my website, sibandalegacy.africa. And people on the book club, it's $225, excluding delivery. Use RMX, which is 100 Rand, delivery. So I hope you can find it interesting. So if you're in business or you deal with people or anybody actually needs to understand intellectual property and that it is everywhere, it does affect all of us in one way or another. Thank you very much, Tebiso.
Thank you so much, Dr. McLean, talking to us, but rather that we should comment for Dr. McLean.
Comment?
Yes, Irene.
Hello,
Yes, Irene.
It just, there are subjects that we can learn about in so many books. We make choices in life, and we make choices about what we read. There's a book for every occasion, to inform, motivate, entertain, to read for the love of reading, and to read simply because we need to progress and to further our own self-improvement. They are all there waiting for us, our grandchildren, to read, and read. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Irene. Wow. Thank you. When I was planning for tonight's event, I thought that I could have like a bomber or a phrase to say at the end of our session. But then I realized that, you get the nuggets or the bomber phrase from what our reviewers have shared tonight. You have also got those nuggets, and this was an encouragement for all of us to go back and read our books, because it will transform our lives. Thank you so much, visionary readers, and thank you so much, Dr. Sibo, for this opportunity.